Good morning and welcome to the second episode where we'll take a closer look at Chinese astrology and some aspects I explained in the previous video. By the way, if you haven't done so yet, I recommend watching the first video where I explained the basic concepts. In Bazi, there are many different approaches to analyzing a natal chart. We have conducted extensive research to select the best from every known method and bring it together into a single theoretical framework. So in this video, I want to explain more clearly the approach we follow in Chinese astrology and a series of specific features of our school without going into detail or technical aspects. Furthermore, I want to delve deeper into the philosophical aspect underlying Chinese astrology, which we introduced in the previous video. First of all, if you're interested in calculating your birth chart, you can use this website that I recommend, basiccalculator.com. You can calculate up to 10 birth charts per day for free. I personally oversaw the Italian translation of this website, and we've also worked on some technical astronomical aspects, fine-tuning a series of features, so at the moment Bazi Calculator is the most accurate in the world, at least among all those I know. Here I'm using my professional version. The free version is simpler, but it's more than sufficient. First of all, here you can enter the person's name, date, month, and year of birth. Time of birth, you can also enter the city of birth, or alternatively enter the longitude, the birth sex, which is important, I mean biological sex. Then you click the calculate button and you can see the person's natal chart. And then following that, a whole series of astrological aspects, so it's easy and it's free. Now, however, in this video, I would like to better explain the philosophy behind Chinese astrology, which is often overlooked but is actually very important. Centuries and centuries of observation have shown that our universe is like a gigantic machine, a huge mechanism that operates by following cycles. And this isn't true only when it comes to the physics and mechanics of things. For example, gravity, the movements of the planets, chemical reactions, and so on. But it's also true on a higher level when it comes to sentient beings, and in particular here we're talking about humans. What has been observed, the big picture that emerges, in fact, after many centuries of analysis, is that what happens, at least on this planet, in this dimension, is like a great, enormous, incredibly long film with countless actors, countless characters. Each one is represented by a person. And this applies not only to people who are alive, but also to all those who have lived in the past, and to all those who will live in the future. Each of these people has a character to play and must be present in certain scenes of the film, where their character in theory has to do certain things and make decisions. As we said, the character and their traits are represented by the entire natal chart, while the actor playing the character is associated with the day master. So, for example, the character in this film could be a rich, bored person, or just an ordinary person to whom strange things happen, or a dishonest person, a loser, a winner, and so on. Each of these with all their talents, abilities, and flaws. This is the character who is defined by a set of traits, and the character is contained within these four pillars, which is why they are called the four pillars of destiny. Precisely because they encompass the person's destiny, specifically the character that the person has. They must play this role during their life in this film with all its pros and cons. However, if we continue with this film metaphor, the actor is not the character, okay? Let's take an actor, any actor. Leonardo DiCaprio, for example. The actor is the one who will play different characters in different films. The actor is not the character. If we give credit to the theory of reincarnation, the actor is always the same, but in different lives or reincarnations, they find themselves playing different characters. So, the natal chart represents the character but not the actor. But then what is the actor? Well, for us, the actor is what we might call the spirit of the person, the soul, the essence of their awareness, which binds itself to this natal chart at the moment of birth and connects specifically to the day master with a seal. This seal will only be broken at the moment of death. You might ask me, but why not? At the moment of conception, in past centuries, the masters have already conducted many experiments they have checked and seen that the character assigned to us depends on the moment of birth and not on the moment of conception, just as it happens in Western astrology. And where do we find the actor that is the soul of the person? We have already said that we associate it precisely with this element. Here, which is the third one from the top right, called the day master, that is the lord of the day. The day master is a specific energy among 10 possibilities. In this example, it is yin wood, and it is the energy with which the soul or spirit of the person connects at the moment of birth, because it is in particular harmony. And this connection will only be severed at the moment of death. This also answers a series of questions, for example. But how is it possible that there are so many people who have the same chart? Birth chart and a different life, sometimes very different. Well, certainly, if we take a birth chart, there are many people on the planet who have the same chart. Birth chart, a few thousand, okay? All of them share more or less the same birth chart, but they can have different lives. Why? Because even if each of these sentient souls incarnated under the same chart will have to face very similar situations and challenges in their life path, in these situations they will often, almost always, have options. They will have the option to choose between several possibilities, and they will also have the option to refuse, to not participate directly in that scene, but instead to remain as an observer. As a result, it becomes very important to know how to make the right choices at the right moments in order to avoid what is unfavorable and instead attract what is favorable. As I will explain to you in a moment, we can do this after determining which energies are favorable and which are unfavorable. In general, we want to seek out favorable energies and instead avoid unfavorable ones. And how can this be done? Just as we have the actor, which is the soul incarnating in a given energetic vehicle, and then we have the character that must be played, if we go a little further down, in this part we have what we call transits. These that you see are the 30-year and 10-year transits, which, together with other shorter transits, 5-year, annual, and monthly, show us the path that this character must take, that is to say, essentially, which scenes they must take part in, which scenes will be presented to them in life, and in general, what kind of situations they will encounter. Now be careful because the character is not the actor, okay? So the natal chart is not the soul to which it is connected. The person, we could say the soul, almost always has the possibility to choose in various situations. They will necessarily have to encounter certain specific situations during their life, but the way they react, the way they handle them, the choices they make, whether they decide to participate or not in the scenes that are presented to them, this automatic mechanism will have a very significant effect on their life and on how things will develop afterwards. And in general, on the person's sense of whether they have a life in which they feel fulfilled or not. Let's clarify right away that in Chinese astrology, what we have observed after many years of study is that favorable and unfavorable energies are not necessarily favorable or unfavorable in terms of success or personal satisfaction, but rather they are favorable or unfavorable for one's spiritual evolution, for one's inner growth. As a result, there may also be favorable energies that are not welcomed by the person because they push them toward a path, one of spiritual evolution, that the person may not want to follow at that particular moment. And this depends greatly on the soul that is connected to the natal chart, that is, on the actor who is playing the character. It depends on whether it is an old soul, a young soul, it depends on previous incarnations, on the mistakes it has made, and so on. But we must always make a distinction. The actor, the soul, is something different from the day master, which instead is the energy it connects to, because it is the energy with which it has a better vibration, a better resonance. As I said, the person's spirit cannot avoid having these scenes present themselves to them. In fact, it probably incarnated precisely to be present in these scenes. This mechanical force of destiny is something superhuman, unstoppable, to which all people are subject. But as the scenes present themselves, one can choose what to do with them and how to handle them. And above all, within a scene, one can make decisions. Even the enlightened, even people of the highest degree of enlightenment, They cannot escape their destiny and they cannot escape their transits. They still have to relate to the character that has been assigned to them, and they still have to show up for the scenes that destiny has reserved for them. From this point of view, there is no difference compared to an ordinary person. Following their natal chart, the Daymaster will be drawn to and compelled to take part in certain very important scenes, where they will have to confront the other energies and the other archetypes present within the natal chart. In our terminology, we say that the Daymaster is involved in the battle of the dominant spirits, which takes place from the first breath until the moment of death, because the person is constantly struggling to master their own destiny and not be dominated by it. Not to be swept away, not to lose control of their own life, not to forget that they are the actor, not just the character. And it will be precisely the person's choices or lack thereof that will determine what they manifest in their life: joy, serenity, and wholeness, or suffering, fear, and guilt. Okay, after this brief philosophical introduction, I'll go on to explain things to you in a bit more detail. What is a natal chart? This is a complete natal chart. As you can see, it is made up of 4 pillars, these 4 vertical elements. We call them pillars. In Chinese astrology, we always read from right to left. So from right to left, we find the year pillar, the month pillar, the day pillar, and the hour pillar. For example, this person, or rather, this individual was born in the year of the yin water snake, in the month of the yang metal monkey, on the day of the yin water ox, and at the hour of the yang wood tiger. We can divide the natal chart horizontally instead of vertically. As we've seen, at the top we have what we call the heavenly stems, which represent the 5 energies of Chinese energetics, each expressed in their yin and yang forms. So in total, there are 10. In Bazi, we use 5 fundamental archetypes. Maybe you already know them, maybe not, but they are water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. Since each of these energies can appear in 2 forms, yin or yang, 5 times 2 makes 10 possibilities. There are relationships between these energies, for example, just for your information. There is the cycle of generation in which water generates wood, wood generates fire, fire generates earth, earth generates metal, and finally metal generates water, and the cycle closes because then water starts generating wood again. Then there is another cycle, which is the complement of the generation cycle, because otherwise there would be an infinite, continuous, unnatural generation. This is the control cycle. In this cycle, water controls fire, fire controls metal, metal controls wood, wood controls earth, and earth controls water. And the cycle starts over. If you want to learn more about these topics, don't worry. Because as I mentioned, we are preparing a free mini course on Chinese astrology where we will talk about this and many other things. Obviously, the subject is much more complex than this, but this isn't the place to go into technical details. These are the same energies found in traditional Chinese medicine and more generally in Eastern energetics. Below instead, you see what we call the earthly branches, which are basically the 12 zodiac animals of the Chinese zodiac. For example, how many do you see here? 4. There could also be 2 of the same or even 3 of the same. It depends. So here we have 4 different ones: the snake, the monkey, the ox, and the tiger. Don't worry if you don't know the ideograms, because as you can see, the colors will guide you. For example, blue elements indicate water, green elements indicate wood, red elements indicate fire, and beige or brown elements indicate earth. And finally, gray elements indicate metal. So even if you don't know the Chinese ideograms, it's very easy to understand what kind of energy you're dealing with. Additionally, you can also see the translation in Italian. Obviously, the zodiac animals, the lower elements, and the heavenly stems, the upper elements, are treated differently and have different functions. In general, we can say that the upper part represents the manifest aspect of life, which the person tends to express publicly, physically, materially, in a clear and easily perceivable way, what we call the external life. Whereas the lower part, the zodiac signs, represents the context, the roots that underlie the manifestation of this person. It also represents how the person's psyche is structured and their inner life. their intimate family life. Starting from all these relationships and expanding on them, we can make a proper reading of a person's birth chart. So to recap, the Daymaster is the actor, the birth chart is the character they've been given to play in this film with their strengths and weaknesses, while the transits are the scenes the person will have to interact with in life that they will encounter and have to manage. And these scenes are determined by the transits. So let's talk about that for a moment. These transits are also read from right to left. Except for the first pillar, each of these transits lasts 10 years. Each transit has a start and end moment. You see that each of these transits lasts 10 years. For example, the transit of the Earth Goat. Yin goes from February 2016 to February 2026. Where does the transit of the Earth Horse begin? Yang, which goes from February 2026 to February 2036. Here begins the transit of the Fire Snake Yin, which goes from February 2036 to February 2046, and so on. At this point, you can see exactly when the first long transit begins. Here, for example, it doesn't just start in February in general, but it starts exactly on February 15th, 2016, which would be this pillar. As I said, the first one is separate for technical reasons. It's the starting pillar. So for example, this person knows that every year ending with the number 6, the long transit changes, which is quite important because the long transit lasts 10 years and greatly influences how those 10 years go. Specifically, it starts on February 15th of every year that ends with a 6, as you can see. 2016, 2026, 36, 46, 56, and so on. To analyze a natal chart and the transits, in-depth knowledge is required. Because just like in Western astrology, these elements you see have complex relationships that can be either vertical or horizontal. There can be oppositions, squares, or combinations like trines and associations, conjunctions, and stelliums. And there are also karmic aspects. Yes, why is that? One thing to which the ancient masters gave importance. A certain value is understanding whether a person carries karmic debts or credits from other lives, okay? And as for karmic aspects, the negative ones, there are several types, some more serious than others. You can find a complete list with a brief explanation in our annual Feng Shui Planner Guide. For more information, see below in the description. In the natal chart, there may not even be any karmic aspects. However, all of us, inevitably during life as time goes by, regardless of whether or not we have fixed karmic aspects in our natal chart, will still have to face transiting karmic aspects that last for the duration of the transit, which could be 10 years, a year, or a month. We call these transitory aspects karmic tests that a person must face in life. Whereas a fixed karmic aspect in the natal chart is usually associated with a fundamentally problematic psychic constitution, which can also lead to tangible or material effects in life due to wrong choices. A transitory karmic test usually represents a problem that comes from the outside, which the person must deal with. And usually it's something much more practical and obvious, like a health problem, an unexpected financial issue, an external change that can bring serious practical problems to the person in the short term, or an unexpected betrayal by someone important to us, and so on. On Basic Calculator, you can find many other things. Here, for example, you can see percentages showing the amount of the 5 energies present in the natal chart. However, please do not infer anything from this section. These percentages, because using percentages to analyze a natal chart is a completely wrong approach. It would be like evaluating a person based on their height. It doesn't seem like a very smart or effective method. Effective. And then you see other aspects and other charts. Here, for example, you see the symbolic stars, which of course you also find in the transits. Well, I think that's everything for now, and that's all I have to say about what we've discussed. What matters to me is that you know how to recognize your Daymaster, know how to identify the elements that make up your natal chart, and recognize the long-term or decadal transits. Also, let me remind you that we are preparing a short free course on Chinese astrology, so if you find this knowledge stimulating and interesting, you'll have the chance to explore it further. This course will consist of a series of lessons where we will delve deeper into the technical aspects, but we will do it in a special way. As much as possible, we will draw comparisons with Western astrology to highlight the similarities and differences. So, if you are already familiar with Universal Western Astrology, this will be a very stimulating course to see things from an alternative perspective. But if you aren't, don't worry, because you'll still have the chance to learn many new things. If you want to know more, you can visit our website kanyufengshuiacademy.com, where you'll find all the information about our activities, consultations, courses, and training programs. And also many free resources such as tips, feng shui, and our blog. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to always stay up to date on the new videos that will be published. In particular, you might be interested in the monthly astrology tips that we post at the beginning of each month. So I'll be waiting for you. See you soon. Bye.